Eli Turner had long stopped expecting kindness from the world. A decorated veteran, he had served with distinction overseas, earning honors and medals that had once seemed to promise respect, stability, and opportunity upon his return. Instead, life greeted him with harsh reality. Jobs that had once seemed within reach vanished as companies downsized and opportunities shrank. Friends he had once trusted had moved on, absorbed in families and careers, leaving him adrift in a world that seemed indifferent to his sacrifices. Letters from family arrived infrequently, tinged with obligation rather than warmth, and even those connections were frayed by years of separation. The home he had imagined upon returning, a place filled with light, a bed of his own, and a small corner for his dog, had never materialized. Instead, he had ended up living in the cramped confines of his old sedan, parked behind abandoned lots and rusted fences, a place where the cold seeped through every crevice and the nights felt endless. Despite the hardship, there was one constant that gave him purpose, that tethered him to hope in a world that otherwise seemed hopeless: Shadow, his German shepherd. Shadow had been by Eli's side since the darkest days of his life, when he first became homeless after losing his apartment due to unpaid bills and mounting medical expenses from injuries sustained in service. Shadow was more than a pet. He was a guardian, a confidant, and the steady heart that reminded Eli he wasn't completely alone. There was a deep, unspoken understanding between them, forged through shared adversity and quiet nights spent huddled together in the back seat of the car. Shadow's gaze could read Eli's emotions more accurately than any human companion, his presence a constant reminder that someone, or something, believed in him unconditionally. The car itself had become a paradoxical sanctuary. Though small and confining, it provided a fragile sense of security, shielding them from the harsh elements and the city streets that often carried the threat of violence or cruelty. On most nights, Eli would curl up in the passenger seat, pulling the worn blanket tight around his shoulders while Shadow pressed close, his warmth a small comfort against the relentless chill. They survived on a patchwork of leftovers, scavenged from restaurants, the occasional handout from strangers who recognized the uniformed veteran, and the sheer willpower of two beings unwilling to surrender to despair. Every morning began with the same ritual: a cautious step out into a world that had largely forgotten them, a search for sustenance, and a walk through the familiar streets where each corner held memories of better days, or at least the hope of them. It was on a particularly frigid morning, when the sky was a muted gray and the city seemed especially silent, that the moment came that would change everything. Eli had spent the night shivering in the back of the car, the heater long dead and the blanket damp with condensation. Shadow, as always, had stayed close, pressing against him, alert and watchful. As dawn broke, painting the skyline with streaks of pale light, Shadow leapt from the car and began sniffing along the base of a large oak tree that bordered an abandoned lot. Eli, groggy and frustrated by the cold, called for him to return, but Shadow's insistence was unmistakable. The dog circled the tree repeatedly, pawing at the ground with precision and urgency, letting out low, expectant whines. Eli sighed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and stepped out of the car. The ground was frozen, each step sending up small clouds of mist as he approached Shadow. The dog's behavior was unlike anything Eli had seen before. There was purpose in every movement, a clear directive to dig at a particular spot. With some hesitation, Eli joined in, using his hands to clear away the leaves, dirt, and debris that had accumulated over years of neglect. Shadow's nose pressed against the earth, guiding Eli's hands as though he knew exactly where to direct the effort. Slowly, through a mix of stubborn determination and instinct, Eli's fingers struck something hard beneath the frost-hardened soil. The object was heavy and metallic, partially buried and coated in years of grime, yet intact. Shadow barked softly, pacing in a small circle, eyes bright and expectant, as Eli cleared away the final layers of dirt. He lifted the box with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, setting it down on the cracked pavement beside the tree. His fingers trembled as he examined it, the cold biting through his gloves. There was an unspoken understanding in the moment, a recognition that whatever lay inside had the potential to reshape not only the circumstances of his life, but also the very path he had been trudging along for so long. With deliberate care, Eli pried open the rusted metal lid. Inside, the contents revealed themselves: carefully folded papers, bundles of currency, and envelopes that had been meticulously preserved. There were letters, photographs, and legal documents, stacked neatly as if waiting for him. His pulse raced as he sifted through the collection, recognizing names and dates that connected him to a past he had never fully understood. Shadow nudged the box with his nose, his eyes wide and unwavering, as though urging Eli to see the truth that had been waiting, buried and patient, beneath the layers of earth and neglect. The letters told stories of family members Eli had never known, distant relatives who had anticipated his arrival and left instructions for him to follow. The photographs depicted moments frozen in time, smiling faces, celebrations, gatherings that spoke of connections long severed. The legal documents outlined assets, bank accounts, and properties, carefully detailed to ensure that Eli could claim them when the time was right. There was a sense of purpose in the arrangement, as if his late uncle, or whoever had left this treasure, had trusted Shadow's instincts to guide him to it, acknowledging the bond between man and dog. For the first time in years, Eli felt the stirrings of hope. The cold, the hunger, the endless nights spent in his car seemed distant now, replaced by the realization that life could still hold miracles. Shadow's loyalty, intuition, and unwavering presence had not only kept him alive, but had led him to an opportunity that might restore the dignity, security, and family connections he had lost. The morning sunlight fell on the metal box and the two companions, illuminating a future that, just hours ago, would have seemed impossible. Eli's hands shook as he closed the rusted lid of the metal box, securing the treasures that had been unearthed by Shadow's relentless persistence. The morning air bit at his face, yet he hardly noticed the cold, absorbed instead by the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. Questions tangled with memories. Who had left this hidden fortune? Why had it been buried in the dead of winter, forgotten by time? And perhaps most importantly, why had Shadow been drawn to this precise location, as if he could sense the invisible threads that connected Eli to a past he had never known? The bond he shared with the dog, once a comforting companion against the loneliness and despair of homelessness, now revealed itself as something far deeper, a force that could guide him through uncertainty and towards redemption. The city around him was waking, the usual hum of traffic and early morning pedestrians a distant murmur compared to the torrent of emotion and realization inside his chest. Eli glanced at Shadow, whose ears were pricked, eyes scanning their surroundings with the vigilant attention that had saved them both countless times. It was a gaze filled with purpose, understanding, and unwavering loyalty. Shadow had always been attuned to Eli's needs, anticipating his mood, sensing his vulnerabilities, and reacting before Eli even knew what he required. But today was different. Today, the dog had acted as a bridge between the despair of the past and the promise of the future. Eli considered the papers inside the box again, now spread across the hood of his car for clarity. There were deeds to properties scattered across the state, each accompanied by meticulous instructions for claiming them. Some accounts contained modest savings meant to cover basic necessities, while others detailed significant financial assets, long kept hidden from public view. Photographs told stories of ancestors, long-lost family members, and moments frozen in time, documenting the lives of those who had hoped Eli would one day uncover their secrets. Letters were written with care, addressed directly to him, explaining circumstances and providing instructions, as if the writers had anticipated the obstacles he would face and the resilience he would need to survive. The enormity of the discovery overwhelmed Eli. For years, he had navigated the world feeling invisible, cast aside by circumstance and dismissed by society. The medals pinned to his chest from his military service had gathered dust, their symbolic value reduced to a footnote in a life marked by hardship and obscurity. And yet, here was evidence that someone had believed in him, someone had planned for him, and someone had trusted that he would persevere until the moment he was ready to reclaim what was rightfully his. Shadow nudged his hand against the metal box, and Eli felt a surge of gratitude for the dog's tireless efforts. Without Shadow's instincts, without his unwavering determination, the treasure would have remained buried and forgotten. Eli spent the remainder of the morning carefully cataloging the contents. Every document was scrutinized, every envelope opened with deliberate care, and each photograph examined for names and dates that might unlock the next step. Shadow remained at his side, lying on the cold asphalt, occasionally rising to circle the tree or sniff at the box, a constant reminder that their partnership was inseparable. The dog's presence transformed what could have been a purely logistical exercise into a shared experience, imbued with a sense of wonder, loyalty, and mutual triumph. By late morning, Eli realized that the discovery would not only alter his immediate circumstances, but could also provide a foundation for rebuilding a life of dignity and purpose. The assets were substantial enough to afford him housing, healthcare, and the opportunity to give back to others who, like him, had faced hardship and neglect. The papers outlined charitable contributions made by the family who had left this legacy, with instructions for Eli to continue their work, helping veterans, supporting service animals, and preserving the memories of those who had sacrificed before him. Shadow's eyes reflected anticipation, as if the dog understood that their survival had been a prelude to something greater, an opportunity to make a meaningful impact on the world beyond their immediate struggle. Eli's thoughts turned to the practicalities of reclaiming what had been hidden. He would need to visit legal offices, locate family connections, and follow a meticulous series of instructions to secure the assets and properties described in the documents. Each step would require patience, focus, and determination, qualities that had been honed in the military and tempered by the challenges of homelessness. Shadow, ever alert and unwavering, would accompany him through each stage, guiding and protecting him, ensuring that the journey forward was navigated with the same vigilance that had kept them alive through months of uncertainty and danger. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Eli realized he was not merely uncovering material wealth, he was uncovering purpose, a mission that could restore his sense of self and provide a meaningful direction for the remainder of his life. The world, which had once seemed indifferent, now appeared full of possibilities, each decision carrying the potential to shape not only his destiny, but also the lives of those around him. Shadow, sensing the shift in energy, wagged his tail gently, pressing against Eli's side, as if acknowledging that the long, cold nights and the endless struggle had led to this transformative moment. For the first time in years, Eli allowed himself to envision a future unburdened by the relentless grind of survival. He imagined a small house with a yard where Shadow could run freely, a warm bed, and a life where they could exist without fear or scarcity. But he also saw a larger purpose, using the discovered assets to assist other veterans, care for service animals, and honor the legacy of those who had planned for him, who had believed in him from beyond the shadows. The discovery, once buried and overlooked, had now become the cornerstone for a life redefined by hope, gratitude, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. As dusk approached, Eli packed the box carefully, securing the documents and valuables for transport. He climbed back into his car, Shadow sliding in beside him with the familiarity of countless shared journeys. The city lights began to twinkle on, and Eli felt a renewed sense of agency and purpose. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into a mission for restoration, connection, and meaning. Shadow's presence remained constant, an unwavering companion through the uncertainty of the coming days, ready to face challenges and triumphs together. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Eli felt equipped to navigate it. The bond with Shadow, tested through hardship and loyalty, had led him to a hidden treasure, both tangible and intangible. The material wealth offered stability, But the trust, companionship, and love represented a far greater reward. A reminder that even in the darkest corners of life, hope could flourish, and extraordinary discoveries could be made with a faithful dog by one's side. The next morning, the chill of dawn wrapped around Eli as he stepped out of his car, Shadow at his side, ready for what lay ahead. Sleep had been fleeting. His mind raced with questions and possibilities. The discovery from the previous day had been staggering, a hidden fortune meticulously preserved, and letters filled with personal history, directives, and a trust placed in him by people he had never met. Every document seemed to whisper encouragement, urging him to reclaim the life he had long been denied. Shadow trotted alongside him, nose occasionally brushing against the cold pavement, ears alert, tail swishing with anticipation, as if the dog could sense the significance of the journey that was only beginning. Eli drove through the waking city, his destination the law office listed in one of the envelopes, a reputable firm whose attention to detail matched the care with which the documents had been written. The office was quiet when he arrived, the receptionist looking up with polite curiosity. Eli presented the papers, watching her eyes widen as she examined the collection. Each deed, each account, each handwritten letter carried legitimacy, and the realization that the assets were real, accessible, and significant settled in Eli's chest like a warm fire. The firm arranged a meeting with a senior attorney who took the time to walk Eli through every necessary step: verification of identity, claims processing, and the gradual transfer of properties and accounts. Shadow lay patiently at Eli's feet, eyes tracking every movement in the room, ears flicking at the sound of typing and phone calls. Hours passed, filled with the rhythm of paperwork and cautious optimism. For years, Eli had been accustomed to the unpredictability of life, to uncertainty and scarcity. Now, he was faced with a future that promised stability, security, and the opportunity to rebuild with intention. The documents spoke not only of wealth, but also of responsibility: directives to support charitable initiatives, assist veterans, and provide care for service animals. Eli's mind raced with possibilities. He could finally provide for himself and Shadow, ensuring comfort and security while also extending the same compassion to others who had suffered like he had. The thought ignited a spark of purpose he had not felt in years, a reminder that the world still held space for kindness, honor, and loyalty. As the afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, Eli's thoughts drifted to the origins of the treasure. Who had buried these assets? Who had placed their trust in him from afar, and why? Each letter contained hints, stories of a family whose lives had intertwined with the city's history, tales of struggle and resilience, and expressions of hope that he, Eli, would one day uncover their carefully hidden legacy. Shadow nudged his hand gently, breaking the reverie, reminding Eli that the dog had been his partner through the darkest times, and that their bond had led them to this pivotal moment. It was a bond that transcended simple companionship. It was a connection forged through survival, loyalty, and mutual reliance. By late afternoon, Eli and Shadow had completed the first series of verifications. The firm confirmed that several properties were ready for claim, including a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, an old workshop with potential for restoration, and a small parcel of farmland that could be cultivated or sold. Financial accounts were verified and accessible, providing the means to cover living expenses, medical care, and, importantly, investment in ventures that could benefit others. Eli's heart swelled with gratitude and disbelief. The life he had imagined, fraught with hardship and uncertainty, was now being rewritten before his eyes. Shadow's tail wagged gently, a reminder of the silent encouragement and unwavering loyalty that had guided him to this turning point. Eli returned to his car, Shadow jumping in with familiar ease. The city streets, now bathed in golden light, felt different, full of possibility rather than indifference. He thought of the countless nights spent in the cold, the endless search for warmth, the constant vigilance required to survive. Those struggles had been real, painful, and shaping, yet they had prepared him for the moment when discovery and destiny converged. Shadow's gaze met his, and Eli understood that the dog had sensed the shift in their fortune long before he could articulate it, guiding him not just physically but spiritually, ensuring that their bond led to redemption and renewal. Over the next few days, Eli began visiting the properties outlined in the documents. Each one told a story, from abandoned workshops with faded tools hinting at a craftsman's past, to overgrown farmland where crops had once thrived. Shadow explored with careful curiosity, sniffing every corner, alert to sounds or signs of other animals, protecting Eli with the same vigilance that had kept them alive through countless trials. Together, they unearthed remnants of the past, old coins tucked into cracks, faded journals tucked beneath floorboards, and letters that revealed the lives of those who had hidden the treasures. Every discovery added depth to the legacy, providing context and connection to the unseen hands that had entrusted Eli with this responsibility. One afternoon, Eli and Shadow reached a property that had been left in particular disrepair, a crumbling farmhouse with windows boarded and paint peeling. The documents hinted at a hidden safe buried somewhere on the land, a repository for valuables, letters, and perhaps something more significant. Shadow immediately led the way, sniffing around the foundation, circling the yard with relentless focus. Hours passed as Eli dug where Shadow indicated, sweat and dirt covering him, but the dog remained resolute, encouraging, as if understanding that persistence would yield reward. Finally, a solid thud echoed from the earth. A heavy metal chest emerged, long forgotten, rusted yet intact. Eli's breath caught in his throat as he opened it, revealing another trove of letters, coins, and personal artifacts, a tangible connection to lives that had existed decades before, now entrusted to him to honor and protect. The emotional weight of discovery settled on Eli as he sat against the farmhouse wall, Shadow leaning into him, offering comfort, companionship, and reassurance. He understood that the true value of the treasure extended far beyond financial gain. It was the responsibility of preservation, the connection to history, and the opportunity to honor those who had trusted him. Shadow licked his hand, breaking the gravity of the moment with a familiar gesture of loyalty and love. Eli smiled, realizing that their journey together had been as much about understanding the power of trust, dedication, and friendship as it had been about uncovering hidden wealth. By nightfall, Eli and Shadow returned to the city, car loaded with the chest and documents. The streets were quiet, punctuated by the occasional honk or distant shout, yet Eli felt an inner clarity that had eluded him for years. He had survived the harshest conditions, weathered the bitter cold, and endured isolation, all guided by Shadow's unerring instincts. Now, they were on the precipice of a new life, armed not only with material resources, but with purpose, history, and an unbreakable bond that had proven itself through every trial. Eli's thoughts wandered to the future, envisioning projects that could honor the memory of those who had hidden the treasure, opportunities to aid other veterans, and ways to ensure Shadow would always have a safe, loving home. The night skies stretched above them, stars glimmering like distant promises. Eli glanced at Shadow, who seemed to look back knowingly, as if sharing in the understanding that their lives were irreversibly changed. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was filled with hope, purpose, and the extraordinary connection between a man and his dog, a connection that had unearthed not just treasure, but a path toward redemption, belonging, and lasting impact. Together, they drove forward into the night, ready to embrace the responsibilities, challenges, and rewards that awaited them. The following morning, Eli awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous days had etched themselves deeply into his consciousness, leaving him feeling both exhilarated and humbled. Shadow stirred beside him, nudging his hand with a wet nose, signaling readiness to continue their work. Eli rose, the weight of the chest and documents from the farmhouse still resting in his thoughts, as he carefully planned the next steps. They had unearthed more than money. They had uncovered a narrative, a legacy of trust and responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. Shadow padded alongside him, ears pricked, alert to every sound, every subtle movement around them, their bond strengthened by the experiences they had shared. Eli decided to focus first on cataloging and understanding the letters, notes, and personal items found within the chest. Each letter contained detailed accounts of the lives of the people who had hidden the treasure: farmers, craftsmen, and community leaders who had once shaped the very land he now walked. They spoke of struggles and triumphs, of love and loss, of hopes for a future beyond their own lifetimes. Eli realized that the treasure was never intended merely as a gift of wealth. It was a carefully curated legacy meant to be discovered by someone capable of understanding its full significance. As he read through the pages, Shadow lay nearby, occasionally shifting to rest his head on Eli's lap, providing warmth and reassurance through their silent companionship. Eli's thoughts often wandered to the past, to the years spent living in his car, enduring isolation and scarcity. He thought of the cold nights, the gnawing hunger, and the constant vigilance required to survive. Shadow had been his unwavering companion through it all, a constant presence offering comfort and protection. Now, as they stood on the threshold of a new life, Eli felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the treasure they had uncovered, but for the unbreakable bond that had guided them here. Shadow's instincts had led him to each crucial discovery, proving that the dog's loyalty and intelligence were integral to every step of their journey. Determined to honor the legacy entrusted to him, Eli began organizing the assets and planning a course of action. He arranged to secure the properties legally, consulted with experts on restoration and preservation, and mapped out ways to utilize the financial resources to benefit others. Each day, Shadow accompanied him, alert and vigilant, often leading Eli to small, previously overlooked details: an unmarked path, a loose floorboard, or a hidden compartment that provided further insight into the intentions of those who had hidden the treasure. Eli marveled at the dog's unerring sense of purpose, understanding that Shadow's guidance was more than instinct. It was a form of intelligence attuned to the significance of their discoveries. One afternoon, while exploring the farmhouse property again, Shadow's behavior changed. The dog sniffed and pawed at a section of the garden that had been largely untouched, barking softly and circling in an unusual pattern. Eli followed, curious and attentive, digging carefully where Shadow indicated. His hand struck something solid, a small, weathered box buried beneath the soil. Inside were additional letters, photographs, and trinkets, each meticulously preserved. They depicted generations of a family that had lived, struggled, and hoped on this land, offering glimpses into lives intertwined with the history of the area. Eli felt a deep connection to these individuals, a sense that they had chosen him not just for his survival skills, but for his capacity to understand and honor their story. Shadow's eyes met his, and Eli understood that the dog's persistence had led them to the heart of the legacy, revealing truths that words alone could not convey. As days turned into weeks, Eli and Shadow worked tirelessly to preserve and organize the materials. The process was meticulous and often exhausting, but the sense of purpose that fueled them was stronger than fatigue or doubt. Eli began to see patterns in the letters and items, a network of trust and generosity designed to reward perseverance, integrity, and compassion. He realized that the treasure was as much about character and resilience as it was about tangible wealth. Shadow's presence remained a guiding force, offering protection, encouragement, and companionship, ensuring that Eli never faltered in his commitment. In parallel with the preservation work, Eli began reaching out to local veterans and community members. He shared his story cautiously at first, testing the waters, and was met with a mixture of skepticism and awe. Yet, as word spread of the discoveries and the history unearthed, the community began to embrace the narrative, contributing their own memories and knowledge. Veterans shared experiences, historians provided context, and neighbors offered assistance in restoring properties and safeguarding artifacts. Shadow, as always, was at Eli's side, greeting each person with a calm presence that seemed to bridge gaps, offering comfort and reassurance through silent communication. The emotional impact of their journey became increasingly evident. Eli found himself reflecting on the hardships he had endured, the years of loneliness, the nights spent shivering in a car, the constant struggle to survive. Yet, he no longer felt the weight of despair. Instead, he recognized the journey as a testament to endurance, loyalty, and the profound connection between a human and a dog. Shadow's unerring instincts had guided him not only to material treasures, but to a renewed sense of purpose, connection, and belonging. The bond they shared had been the key to unlocking the legacy, a reminder that resilience, faith, and companionship could overcome even the harshest adversity. As they continued their work, Eli began documenting the entire process, writing his own letters and notes to accompany the items they had found. He sought to preserve not only the historical record, but the lessons embedded within the experiences, the value of perseverance, the importance of loyalty, and the enduring power of compassion. Shadow remained vigilant, often guiding Eli to overlook details, ensuring that nothing was missed, and that the legacy would be accurately conveyed to future generations. Together, they forged a new path, honoring the past while shaping a future built on understanding, care, and shared purpose. By the end of the month, the properties had been secured, the letters and artifacts cataloged, and plans for community engagement underway. Eli felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had not only uncovered hidden wealth, but also revitalized a narrative of generosity, resilience, and loyalty. Shadow, ever faithful, remained his constant companion, reminding him that the journey was as significant as the destination, and that their bond had been the key to unlocking everything they had discovered. In every glance, wag, and nudge, Shadow reinforced the understanding that true treasure was found not in material wealth alone, but in the connection between a human and a dog, and the legacy they could create together. The final days of their journey felt almost surreal to Eli. After months of careful work, painstaking research, and countless discoveries guided by Shadow, he began to see the full magnitude of what they had achieved. The once neglected properties had been restored to a state that honored their history. Letters, photographs, and artifacts had been meticulously cataloged and preserved, and the stories of generations past now had a voice through Eli's careful documentation. The community, once skeptical, had embraced the legacy, offering their support, sharing their memories, and lending a hand in preserving the treasures they had all but forgotten. Shadow, ever vigilant, remained a steadfast presence, a symbol of loyalty and unwavering guidance throughout this transformative journey. Eli realized that the true treasure extended far beyond the tangible wealth and historical artifacts. Each discovery had deepened his understanding of human connection, resilience, and the enduring impact of compassion. He remembered the cold nights sleeping in his car, the gnawing hunger, the isolation, and the despair he had felt, and he understood how far he had come. Shadow had not merely been a companion. The dog had been his guide, protector, and constant reminder that hope often arrives in the form of quiet, unwavering loyalty. Every nudge, bark, and gesture from Shadow had pointed Eli toward a deeper truth, that their journey was about more than uncovering wealth. It was about uncovering meaning, purpose, and the bonds that define us as humans. With the tangible work largely completed, Eli focused on ensuring that the legacy would continue to benefit others. He began organizing programs to support local veterans, families, and community members, offering guidance, financial assistance, and educational opportunities. The funds uncovered in the treasure allowed him to establish scholarships, create community projects, and provide resources to those in need. Every initiative was infused with the spirit of generosity and perseverance that had guided the original creators of the treasure. Shadow remained by his side through every meeting, every planning session, and every public gathering, his presence a constant reassurance to Eli that their bond was inseparable and that the journey they had undertaken was truly extraordinary. One morning, as the sun cast long golden rays across the restored farmhouse, Eli walked through the property, observing the gardens, the outbuildings, and the small details that had once been hidden under neglect and decay. Shadow padded alongside him, occasionally stopping to sniff or paw at a familiar spot, as if retracing the steps that had brought them to this point. Eli paused near the edge of the orchard, reflecting on the countless hours spent uncovering the letters, the chest, and the buried secrets. He marveled at the meticulous planning and care of those who had hidden the treasures, and at the trust they had placed in someone like him to carry forward their legacy. Shadow nuzzled his hand, and Eli felt a wave of gratitude and awe wash over him, recognizing that their journey had transformed him in ways he could never have anticipated. As news of Eli and Shadow's discovery spread, they became a symbol of hope and inspiration for the community. Local historians, journalists, and storytellers sought them out, eager to understand the journey that had unfolded in such remarkable detail. Eli shared his experiences openly, emphasizing not only the treasures themselves, but the lessons learned along the way. The importance of perseverance, the power of loyalty, and the extraordinary bond between a human and a dog. Shadow, ever watchful, greeted each visitor with calm dignity, as though recognizing the significance of their attention and the role he had played in guiding Eli through every step of the journey. The most profound impact, however, was felt within Eli himself. He no longer viewed his past hardships with despair, but with appreciation for the resilience and patience that had allowed him to endure. The years of struggle, isolation, and uncertainty had forged a character capable of understanding and honoring the legacy that had been entrusted to him. Shadow had been his anchor, his compass, and his unwavering source of support throughout. Each discovery, each obstacle overcome, and each moment of triumph had been a testament to their partnership, a living proof that loyalty, courage, and love could guide one through even the darkest of circumstances. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Eli sat on the farmhouse porch, Shadow lying at his feet. The dog's steady breathing, warm body, and gentle nudge reminded him of the countless times Shadow had led him to answers, protection, and hope. Eli looked across the land they had restored, the fields, orchards, and structures now thriving, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He understood, fully, that the treasure they had uncovered was not just material wealth. It was the culmination of trust, history, and a legacy of compassion that had been passed down through generations and finally entrusted to someone worthy. Eli knew that life would continue to present challenges, but he also knew that with Shadow by his side, there was no obstacle they could not face. They had transformed not only abandoned land and hidden treasures, but also themselves, discovering purpose, fulfillment, and an unbreakable bond that would endure for the rest of their days. Shadow's gentle gaze met his, full of intelligence, trust, and love, and Eli whispered a quiet promise to always honor the journey they had shared, the legacies they had uncovered, and the extraordinary companionship that had guided them through it all. As night fell, Eli and Shadow walked through the restored orchard one final time for the day, pausing to observe the fruits of their labor. The wind carried the sense of the land, the history, and the countless lives that had once shaped it. In that quiet moment, Eli realized that the treasure had always been more than gold, money, or material wealth. It was the journey itself, the lives touched, and the profound bond between a man and his dog. Shadow wagged his tail softly, resting his head on Eli's knee, and Eli felt a sense of peace and completion unlike anything he had ever known. They had faced despair, unearthed secrets, honored legacies, and in the process discovered the truest form of wealth: love, loyalty, and the enduring power of trust. And so, under the starlit sky, the veteran and his German shepherd sat together on the porch of a restored farmhouse, surrounded by the legacy of generations past, the hope of generations to come, and the unbreakable bond that had guided them every step of the way. Shadow leaned against Eli, and Eli whispered to the dog that they had done it. They had honored the past, transformed the present, and ensured that the stories, struggles, and triumphs they had uncovered would never be forgotten. In that moment, the world felt whole, and Eli knew that no matter what the future held, they had found something far greater than treasure, a life of purpose, connection, and love that would endure forever.